What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 429 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with Drew Dinkmeyer to re-rank the Western Conference. We've had some trades, a lot of injuries out there. Some teams getting decimated and some teams really struggling and dealing with injuries. We won't be talking about the Pelicans and other cellar dwellers, but we'll try to re-rank these teams who are competing for a championship with me to do so. Again, Drew Dinkmeyer. Dink, how's it going?
It's going well, Mike. Happy birthday to you, potting on your birthday. A gentleman and a scholar for the people, as always. Trades, coaches fired, a lot of moves up and down the standings. We've talked about the Wild Western Conference this year and how just like a 2 or 3 game losing streak can send you falling quickly down the standings. And it's going to be an important race the rest of the season, both in terms of playoff seeding, but also avoiding that play-in in such a competitive and loaded Western Conference. And as the season has been going on, we have sort of sneaking up there Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs maybe in the playoff hunt as well. So it's a fun and evolving Western Conference.
Yeah, it's getting a little deeper than we thought. The Kings also, new coach. They got a 2-game winning streak. They look like they're kind of dead, but a couple really nice wins. Really nice win against the Sixers. Thanks for the birthday wishes, by the way. Wouldn't have it any other way. I go hiking in the morning, listen to pressers all day, potting, talking about basketball. It's a great way to spend the birthday. Let's talk about the top. I mean, they're undisputed heavyweight favorite. Is OKC. Obviously, they're going to finish one. I feel pretty confident in that. I'm sure you do too. But the question is, can they win it all? Do they have enough experience? All that stuff. That's the question. Finishing one is not a question anymore.
Yeah, they've developed a pretty strong lead in the standings now, up 5 games on the Memphis Grizzlies, 5.5 on the Houston Rockets, 6 games in the loss column. And I mean, we're like 40% of the way through the season. We've got like 9 more games for Oklahoma City to be halfway through the season. And they've only lost 5 games in total. So making up 5 games in the standings when a team's only like losing 5 or 6 games the rest of the way will seem pretty tough. I mean, they're so good that if they continue this run, which is funny to look at a 12-game win streak when we all watched them get absolutely annihilated in the finals of the Emirates NBA Cup in the midst of this win streak. But if they continue on this run, I mean, we might start having conversations about them in kind of the upper 60s win club, which is just wild to think of. So given the depth of the Western Conference, and they're doing this all without arguably their second or third best player in Chet Holmgren. So they are a monster. I think the only conversations that are really interesting around OKC right now are about how they are going to go about attacking the trade deadline and how they're going to go about attacking the trade deadline over the next few years. They've got all these picks, and I think people are like, oh, maybe they should be aggressive and do these things. I think their version of being aggressive was going out and getting Hartenstein, getting Caruso. I don't think there's going to be many more moves. I think they understand the value of first-round picks in the new CBA, and so I think this is probably going to be the squad, and it's a heck of a squad to go into the playoffs. So I think they're the team right now. Both of us picked them to finish first in the Western Conference coming into the season. They've lived up to expectations. Both of us had them in the finals, and I believe both of us picked Boston over OKC in the finals. And I think I have no reason to necessarily change that. I think OKC will be the team that represents the Western Conference in the finals come June.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting growth out of Case and Wallace. They're getting even more growth out of SGA. Jadov's been a little inconsistent. Dort's been, I'd say, just as good defensively, adding Caruso. And then the big thing, we talked about this a lot in the playoffs, we don't want them playing Denver. Now they got Hartenstein. They've got a way to at least neutralize Jokic, which, I mean, I use that term neutralize compared to where they might have been, because nobody's neutralizing Jokic here. But I mean, they've got the full roster here. I don't think they need to add someone like Cameron Johnson, but they got the ammo if they wanted to do it, because you're just taking away minutes from. You basically just say, oh, Isaiah Joe, we don't really need you anymore,
right?
And getting more shooting there, because they've got defense just flush all over the place. So we're gonna do the next one, and like they're clear top tier. No one's even touching them. A team could go on a 10-game win streak, and it would take me so much to be dissuaded.
Yeah.
So yeah, then the second tier, we've got a little bit of a different order, and I've got one in the second tier that you don't. So we'll start at the top of the tier. I Memphis and Houston are like the top of this tier for me. So do you have an edge of who do you think is better better of the two? Certainly two teams that are playing really, really well and winning it with defense.
It's interesting because I think over the course of the regular season, I probably trust Memphis a little bit more. I think they've endured all the different injuries that you could potentially endure, and they keep piling up wins. And it speaks to the talent and the depth of the roster. That's not a knock on Houston's roster, which is incredibly deep and talented as well. I just think for a regular season, like Memphis has sort of proven they can withstand a lot of these injuries and still rack up wins. And they also play sort of a unique style of basketball that's very different. I know a lot of NBA writers have been talking about this over the last month, that Memphis just doesn't run pick and rolls, which is like completely different than how the rest of the league plays. I think that's very hard to game plan for over the course of the regular season when coaches don't have a lot of time. So I think the way Memphis plays is just weird and unique, and their roster is deep. And I think that all like works for regular season wins. Playoffs, when a team can sit there and like prepare for you and your depth doesn't matter quite as much in the playoffs, I think I'd prefer Houston in that scenario. And I might even prefer Dallas, another team that we have in this tier, to these two teams once we get playoff time. But I think for the regular season, I'd probably take Memphis slightly ahead of Houston, and both those teams ahead of Dallas because of the depth benefits that those two teams have compared. But yeah, Memphis has been incredible this season. Just to give context, I had them as a 6 seed coming into the season. Mike, you had them as an 8 seed coming into the season. Houston, I had as a 9 seed coming into the season. They did not make your top 10 coming into the season, Mike. So, these are two teams that have been great stories. And I think the common thread between these two teams, as a reminder for when we're thinking about forecasting teams in the future and what wins out over the course of the season and whatnot, youth, ascending talent and youth on both of these teams. On Memphis, you've got it with Desmond Bane. You've got it with the draft pick with Zach Edey. You've got it with Scottie Pippen Jr. And Memphis has been just a development hub. Everybody that goes there seems to get better. And then on Houston side, you've got Amen Thompson. You've got Tari Eason. You've got Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith, all these young players that are sort of ascending. And then depth, right? Both of these teams just have exceptional depth. So outperform both of our expectations here in the top of the tier in a very loaded Western Conference. Just incredibly strong starts to the season for those two teams.
Yeah, one thing that kind of is a similarity we're talking in terms of like where they rank seeding wise, and one thing we talk about that's a concern in the postseason is your ability to create half court offense. That's a concern for both these teams. Memphis is averaging 32 possessions in transition per game. To put that number in context, usually the league leader is like 22 or 23. They are like running like I've never seen. I can't imagine anyone's matched that number. I look back like 15 years, no one touched them. So does that go away in the postseason? I don't know. And then the Rockets, their half court offense is a problem. They're 26 and half court offense. That's a big, big issue. They are clearly winning on defense. Can they generate enough points when the screws are tight and teams are playing better defense and they can't really just out defense you down the stretch because they don't have shot making? They haven't had shot making. And Amen, despite his growth, Fred VanVleet struggling from three. Jalen Green's still not a good enough volume 3-point shooter, shooting the ball better inside this year. But their offense is a concern. But I have very little doubt that those two teams have enough. I mean, we'll talk about the Suns a little bit, but what Memphis did and the way they play so, I hate, they play hard. And I always cringe when I hear coaches say that, but they play hard to me. All their guys top to bottom give them stuff. Guys who are as you noted, Luke Kennard, passing the ball more in the flow of the offense, which you would have never thought. He's had decent assists here and there. He's basically out of the rotation. Jaren's been awesome, and they've been keeping these guys their minutes down overall. But yeah, they're going to get Gigi Jackson back pretty soon. Vince Williams will be back pretty soon. They're pretty loaded, and they don't have the OKC treasure chest, but they've got some stuff. If they did want to, we saw they were in on Dorian Finney-Smith. I think they would rather have a shot maker, but if they want, maybe they're in on Cam Johnson. That would fit way better for OKC than OKC for me. But yeah, I think those two teams are pretty legit. Anything you want to add on that? And then we could just kind of talk about the back half of the second tier. The Mavericks, who are really injured. And I almost put them in third tier. And then Denver really crushing offensively. I think they're like first in offense over their last 6 or 7 games, but like 22nd in defense.
Yeah.
So I'm buying the offense, and I'm just trusting Denver. We played this song and dance so many times. We're like, okay, when the chips are down, like they'll start to defend when it matters. But Aaron Gordon being hurt again is a concern, and now the Mavs, PJ Washington knee sprain, Luka is out close to All-Star break. Can Kyrie hold up? They'll get Narji back from suspension. Derek Lively just got back from injury. This team's dealing with so many injuries, so the margin's a little bit tight on Dallas, despite playing really well when they are healthy.
Absolutely. And these two teams, I think, when you compare them to Memphis and Houston, the differences in depth are really sort of distinct. Depth and the ability to kind of weather the storm on health. Now, Dallas has done a really good job this season in games without Luka Doncic to this point. They have a winning record in those games, but knowing that Luka's out for, a couple more weeks puts more pressure on Kyrie to be able to stay healthy. We know that Kyrie historically has had a harder time playing 65 to 75 games in a season. So like he's got to get managed through this stuff. So they're in kind of the thick of kind of the tough spot. But I think when the chips are down, we just saw Dallas get to the finals, make a big playoff run, upset a couple teams because of the strength and the caliber of the individual offensive play with Luka and Kyrie, and the strength tactically that we saw of what they were able to come up with defensively to kind of neutralize teams or make teams uncomfortable during the course of the playoffs. And so I have a lot of trust in Dallas in the playoffs. I have a lot of trust in Denver in the playoffs. Denver, the biggest concern right now is it's the same concern we have every year with Denver. We talk about this every year around this time of the year, is the defense good enough to be a title contender? And what we saw is in the past, they were able to kind of ratchet up that defense when it mattered most. And we talked about this during those seasons, during 2 years ago when they won the title. We talked about, hey, they're like 15th overall in defense, but if you look at clutch defense situations, they're like top 5. And so like we think they're being underrated because they just tend to like kind of like wander through games from time to time. Mm-hmm. I do wonder if that top end ceiling is still there for Denver. They lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Aaron Gordon's getting towards the part of his career where you would expect the defense to start to fall off a little bit. He's been dinged up quite a bit so far this season, and they just don't have the same level of depth. They're trying to rely on the improvements from Christian Brown defensively and then Peyton Watson to kind of insulate some of this, but it's tricky. And right now they're getting good defensive performances from Russell Westbrook right now. That tends to waver significantly. There's a lot of variance in what we've seen from defensive performances from Russ. So a lot of confidence in these two teams come playoff time, but for the rest of the season, in terms of being able to stay out of that play-in, these two teams, their vulnerability to depth issues, Denver as a roster as a whole just has a ton of depth issues. And then Dallas, their roster, it's not that they have a bunch of depth issues with their roster. It's just that Luka tends to need games off in a way that Jokic does not. And so you have more that you need to sort of make up for. And I should say Luka and Kyrie compared to like Jokic in terms of the games that he needs off. But yeah, I think the more I talk through this, I think Denver probably is deserving of being in this tier. So I'm in more agreement with you. But I would also like say that if we were starting a playoff series between Denver and Houston or Memphis, I don't know. I think I'd pick Denver against Memphis. Against Houston, I don't know. I think I would, but it's tough. It's tough. And so I think like even though we're saying we're more confident in Houston, Memphis in the regular season the rest of the way, and I think that's a strong level of confidence, when we get to the playoff time, I'm more confident relative to where they are in the regular season for Denver and Dallas. But I think they're in this tier playoff wise with Memphis and Houston as well, where I'd be kind of considering these teams somewhat similarly from a playoff perspective.
I'd pick Denver probably over anyone except for OKC. So fun stat here. Their fourth quarter defensive rating is 5th in the league. Guess where it is in the first half?
I would guess dead last.
Dead last. Yes. So like when they could turn it on, man. And Malone just talks about it all the time that like they just what they do, and he's waiting for them to get it going. Like to be like Washington better than them, Utah better than them. Like it's crazy. So I don't know. Just this team just keeps doing it, and one of these days, like they're gonna learn a lesson, I think. But I think when the playoffs come around, they'll be like okay defensively, and I think their offense is really going here. Joker's on another level. Jamal's looking a little bit better. Christian Brown's being like okay. So, but it's really just Joker's just on another level here. But the Mavs though. Man, the PJ thing's pretty big, man. Like PJ's been a really key defender. He's been really important for their defense. You take him away, and this is when you start to if PJ's out, like you're gonna really feel it without Derek Jones Jr. there anymore. And their defense, which has been again, Derek Lively was really good yesterday. His rim defense is awesome. We saw him like, oh my god, like look at the minutes with Şengün against Lively last night, and the minutes with Şengün against Gafford. Like, oh my god, just night and day. Gafford's been playing pretty poorly against like the high end centers. Just as a quick aside, so yeah, I'm a little bit nervous. I think they kind of everyone talks about Luka and Kyrie in offense, but like their defense was really really good last year, and I think PJ if he can't get back to normal, they might slip in the standings, and I don't think you want to be sixth or seventh and having to fight uphill in the first 2 rounds, especially you don't want to be eighth. I don't think they're going to fall that far, but PJ thing's a big deal without Luka. Like you're really feeling it. They're a little bit top heavy, and Najee would be back. That'll be helpful off suspension, but a little bit concerned. I want to if PJ's okay, take that back, but I think PJ is a pretty big injury there. To the third tier again. Did I convince you putting Denver in the second tier? By the way,
Yeah, I think
okay.
I think that's reasonable. The fourth quarter note was a good one. I think the biggest question mark for me is can they can we get this team fully healthy to the playoffs?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can with the amount of like last year, remember how gassed they were in the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
And then they came back from like down 20 every game against the Lakers. And it just looked like you were running uphill the whole playoffs and the whole second half of the season for Denver. And I'm worried about that again with the amount of responsibility they're putting on Jamal and on Jokic. And they don't have the safety net of like really resting those guys because at like when we're talking about, they might not fall that far right now, 10th place is 2 losses different than these guys. Like it's so hard to maintain staying out of the play-in the Western Conference that you have to push guys. And so that's like my biggest fear with Denver is, and the other thing about Denver is there's nothing coming to save them. Yep. They have no flexibility with the way that they've set up this roster. So they had to hit on those first round picks that they traded to get, and they haven't really hit on them in a big way. And so I just don't like, there's been this talk of Michael Porter Jr. for Zach LaVine, but Denver needed to get rid of Zeke Nnaji to do that. Nobody wants Zeke Nnaji's contract. So I don't know that there's anything coming to help Denver. And that's my biggest worry compared to like Dallas, Houston, Memphis. Those teams have assets that can move things around and improve. Denver, this is the best the roster is going to get, I think.
Yep. You count on Christian Brown and Peyton Watson to get more growth. Julian Strawther's been pretty bad. And man, I mean, I think nothing highlights it more than the Detroit game when like they had this game in the bag and their second unit let it slip and they got to bring their starters back in and Jamal played 40 minutes or whatever. So yeah, it's real tight. They can't lose Jamal again with Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon's not coming back soon. Mike Malone said he's still going to miss a few games at least. Okay, so the top of tier 3 here, the Clippers, who have life. They're 6th right now. We've got Kawhi Leonard a couple days away from returning. James Harden just got listed questionable for tonight as a random note. They've done enough. I mean, Norm and Zoo, like we had lofty expectations on these guys, and they have surpassed them with flying colors. Chris Dunn, we talked about him being a sneak. He's been really good for them. Derek Jones Jr., really valuable piece defensively. We talked about that with Dallas. I mean, this team's dangerous. If Kawhi comes back and can play consistent, he's going to miss back-to-backs, all that stuff. But like if he is in a place where he can be peak and not miss games in the playoffs, like this team could be dangerous. What do you think about where the Clippers stand, where they are now, and then if they could kind of make a run?
Another big surprise team for neither of us had them in the top 10 in the preseason predictions. And we thought that things would go real south for the Clippers. I think we underestimated what James Harden still had left in the tank offensively in terms of being able to be a little bit of an offense unto himself. I think we underestimated the offensive load that Norm Powell and Ivica Zubac could carry, and they've carried it in an incredible way. And then I think we probably underestimated how much they could defend with Chris Dunn, with Derek Jones Jr., with those additions, and how much like a Zubac Harden Powell team could defend, because like those three guys, I think Zubats has been considered a solid plus defender, but not like an elite defender. And Harden and Powell had not been considered good defenders in many, many years in Norm Powell's case. So kudos to them. I think they've outperformed on all facets. It's going to take some time. I think there will be a little bit of a natural letdown when Kawhi gets back, just in the sense that like they're going to have to figure out new rhythms playing with Kawhi in a way that's different than what they've been able to do now. But the offensive firepower that brings, especially in late game situations, super, super valuable. So this is the team that, like, if you're looking for tier 3 and tier 4 teams that could make a run and make things very interesting, it's like, what version of Kawhi do we have? Because if we've got the version of Kawhi we've seen in the past in the playoffs, this team is very, very, very dangerous. But shout out to Ty Lue and that coaching staff and the front office for like building a team that is held up 30 plus games in the season. Like we thought, this is why we were down on the Clippers. We thought Kawhi's missing half the season. Kawhi's missed almost half the season, and the Clippers have held it together. So very impressive job by their team.
Yeah, he'll definitely be missing half the season because we know he won't play those back-to-backs, and he'll just miss games.
Right.
That's what's going to happen there. And you got to shout out Jeff Van Gundy. He's like their defensive coordinator, and Tyler shouts him out all the time too. So the other two teams in our tier 3 both have a lot to talk about. One just made a trade, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the other is Minnesota Timberwolves, whose two big trade pieces closed. We saw I'm sorry, one didn't close, one did close. Julius Randle did not close. They closed with Nasreen, and then Dante DiVincenzo did close. Dante's playing really, really well. And this team's been really inconsistent offensively, but their defense is there. Defense wins championships, I've heard. So Minnesota, I don't know. We always talked about losing Cat, which looks quite bad with how great Cat's playing. It's just, you're lowering your ceiling, and that was always a concern. So I don't know. I almost want to put this team in tier 4. I mean, you could almost say the Clippers. Like, I almost think the Clippers should be in their own tier with Kawhi coming back. Honestly, I haven't seen enough out of the Lakers yet, but I think Dorian's a good player. So yeah, start with either Minnesota or the Lakers. I guess let's go Minnesota. I kind of set that up.
Yeah,
better. Let's go with them first.
On the Minnesota side of things have been improving of late, but so my note on Minnesota is like, I was about to say the Clippers are the only team from this tier below that I could see like really like making a run to win the conference. Like they're the only team that I could see if like in the best case scenario. I wanted to say that, maybe I'm wrong on the Clippers, or excuse me, maybe I'm wrong on Minnesota not being included in that group, because I still want to believe that we can see Anthony Edwards in takeover mode that he got into kind of at the end of the last season and into the playoffs. But we haven't seen that level of aggressiveness from him. And I keep asking for it, wanting it to see him continuously attack the rim and kind of change the tone of that offense, which plays a little bit soft right now, which is interesting because they play so physically defensively, but offensively they play just a little bit like soft and not that difficult to defend. And we just haven't seen it. And it's almost halfway through the season. So I don't know if we're going to see it this year. I'm hesitant. And then the thing that I thought they'd be, this is the team, by the way, that we both had as the second seed coming into the season. So we thought this team would be very good in the regular season. One of the reasons we thought this team would be very good in the regular season was defense. That's held up. Another reason was depth. We thought they'd have a lot of depth with the addition of Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo and the drafting of Rob Dillingham. We haven't seen Rob Dillingham very much. And so we haven't seen the level of depth that I thought we were going to see them kind of be able to get through the season. I thought we were going to see Rob Dillingham play a good bit to be able to take the pressure off Mike Conley, to be able to add some scoring and some scoring punch to this team. And we haven't seen any of it. And so I'm still wondering if we're going to get any of that. And I think because they started the season slowly, they've been in sort of self-preservation, desperation mode, and they haven't had the time to sort of integrate and try out Rob Dillingham for long key stretches and allow him to make mistakes, as all rookies do, and to grow and develop. And so I think because this team has gotten themselves in a standings period where they're in this like self-preservation, desperation mode, they're going to keep playing things tight. And I think that's to their long-term detriment as well. So yeah, I've gotten a lot more pessimistic on Minnesota. As one of the things that we were optimistic on, the defense, that's held up. Another thing was Anthony Edwards' continued growth. That has not really come this season.
Mhm.
And then another thing was the depth, and the depth has not been a thing. Like Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid, yes, they're still really solid pieces. Dante DiVincenzo playing better of late. But I thought we were rolling 9 or 10 deep every night
Mhm.
with what Josh Minot did in the preseason, with Rob Dillingham being a top 10 pick that they invested in. And we're not really seeing that. And so I think that they've been pretty healthy. Like they're
Very.
vulnerable to an injury and then having to go deeper into stuff that they haven't been giving those guys minutes to be tested. So yeah, I've lost a lot of my optimism for Minnesota as the season is worn on.
Yeah, just their offenses. They play so slow. It just everything's so hard. Ant was driving for like 4 or 5 after that quote where he was talked about how bad their offense is. He was driving like 15, 16 times a game. That's gone away the last couple. So yeah, I don't know, man. Like I think they could turn it around, but Julius Randle hasn't separated. They're trying to like integrate this like post passing out of him, and they just don't have enough of a cohesive unit around him. Just him and Ant aren't a good fit. It's like kind of just plain and simple to me. The Lakers made a pretty big, not a big trade, but an interesting trade, picking up Dorian Finney-Smith and sending out D'Angelo Russell, among others. Maxwell Lewis, tough injury for him, by the way. Does this do anything for you? You're not adding really more shot making. You're just adding, almost like a another Rui. I think Dorian
Mhm.
Finney-Smith's a better defender than Rui is. Got a little bit more size, could play a little bit more small, gives you more diversity defensively, but not really another guy who could kind of take a little pressure off LeBron. Obviously, Austin Reeves had the big game last time out, but does the Dorian Finney-Smith thing add? He's obviously a great, great addition, but does that do anything for you as far as moving the needle on this team still needing a little bit more juice offensively? Their offense has been a problem.
Yeah, so I think it just sort of makes things, the puzzle pieces fit better
Mm-hmm.
now, and there's less like square peg round hole stuff that D'Angelo Russell like clearly was within the offense. So it's like another piece that kind of fits and gives JJ Redick some more options. And because of that, I'm sort of hoping that that will have an effective, like sort of an intangible effect that just kind of cleans things up and they start kind of playing better on the offensive end. We've seen Austin Reeves play really well. The challenge has been, and this was the challenge coming into the season, we both had the Lakers as 10th in our preseason predictions. The risk we had for the Lakers was like, hey, they're coming off the season where they got incredible health from LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And if they don't get incredible health from LeBron James and Anthony Davis, what do things look like? Like it looks
Mm-hmm.
really grim if that's the case. They are still in that category where if they lose LeBron James or Anthony Davis, things do not look very good. And in some cases, this trade makes them even more vulnerable to that because D'Angelo Russell's at least a shot creator that Dorian Finney-Smith is not in that instance.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen the wear and tear on LeBron and AD start to hit in the last month. And so that's the question mark is like, can they hold the health? I think on an individual game basis, you could make an argument that they could touch the next tier, that they could touch the bottom of it on an individual
Mm-hmm.
game basis. Over the course of a series, over the course of the rest of the season, in terms of managing health, I think it's a very difficult argument to make. And so that's my issue with the Lakers is I just don't know how much we can rely on LeBron at age 40, Anthony Davis to keep playing the amount of minutes and take the defensive responsibility that he's taking. And so like I think if you want to get more optimistic on the Lakers, I think we still need more in terms of like more in reserve via trade to try to help cushion the blow of any lost time that you have from those guys. Because the problem is like you get into these situations that I think Minnesota's in, that I think the Lakers are going to be in, where you're so close to this playoff bubble that you feel like you can't afford to rest guys. And when you can't afford to rest guys, you just like bleed out slowly. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what's probably going to happen to the Lakers over the course of the season. But I do think the trade gives them some more clarity in roles and fits and different things that I think is helpful.
Yeah, just I honestly think about a month ago when AD looked really slow and he had like that single digit game against Miami and the other one that was really bad, he should have sat. Like that game against Memphis way back, he hurt his foot, plantar
Yeah.
fasciitis, listed for a month. With that, I think if they had like depth, he would have sat out some of those games, but like they don't, and now they have Dorian. Maybe they sit him out a little bit. Jackson Hayes is back. Who knows if Christian Wood could come back? Jared Vanderbilt probably had a step back while we're doing this podcast. But yeah, I don't know. I don't trust their offense right now. They're 21st in offense in the last month, and that includes 3 of their last 4. They've been really good. So it was like,
Yeah.
I remember looking it up. They were like 27th or something over a month span. So
It's when
I don't know.
AD and LeBron weren't healthy.
Yep,
Like that.
exactly.
Like if these guys are perfectly healthy, this offense will be good.
Mm-hmm.
Like LeBron James, Austin Reeves, Anthony Davis. You can spread the floor with some shooting, whether it's Rui, Dorian Finney-Smith. Dalton Connect struggled for the last month as well. That's hurt them quite a bit. But like I think if these guys are fully healthy, the offense will be good. Will we be able to get them back to fully healthy? The schedule is overwhelming. Like they were not healthy during the time where the schedule lightened up, and that in particular, like you could say that's good fortune in terms of they weren't playing as many games during that period. But it's also concerning that they weren't able to get back to a full level of health during that stretch when because the in-season tournament there was more spaced out games.
For sure. So we'll see if they can stay on the court. The last tier we're going to talk about, tier 4, let's start with the 2 teams who are like really falling. Who are you more worried about? The Golden State Warriors, who they were like beating the spread by like 15 points a night earlier in the year. They were like 12-2 or something. And the Suns, I think they were 8-1, and it's completely flipped. There's so much wrong with both of these teams. I'll let you know. Who are you more worried about? You could start with I don't know. They're both in like such bad shape right now.
I'm more worried about Golden State. On the plus side for Golden State, Kuminga's been playing a little bit better of late, and you could point to 3-point variance essentially being the whole difference between their hot start and their recent struggles. During their hot start, their first 16 games, I think they shot like 38% from the field. Opponents shot like 30% from 3. And then of late, it's been kind of flipped. But Golden State, I said during the course of the offseason, and you were very bullish on Golden State. This was one of the teams that you really liked because of all the depth that they added. You had them as your 6th seed. I had them as my 7th seed. So underperforming both of our expectations as we were both optimistic here. That the depth was really important to being able to facilitate keeping Steph and Dre healthy. We've already seen them both deal with injury issues during the course of the season, and we've seen the depth get kind of eaten away at with the loss of DeAnthony Melton, with some lack of confidence that they've had in some other players. And then the thing that worries me the most is like the other night. So I was watching the Warriors game the other night, and it was the first time I can remember watching Warriors basketball when Steph's been healthy, when I saw offensive possessions where nobody was moving, where it was like 4 guys spread out and then Kuminga just going one-on-one into pick and rolls or trying to drive or trying to do spin moves and creating different things. And I know Kuminga's been playing a lot better of late, and some of this has been his ability to do that. But that's not Warriors basketball when like nobody's moving around. And I just don't think the Kuminga Warriors fit. Like, I don't think they can both work together. Like, I don't think they both work together well. So when Kuminga plays his best, I don't think the Warriors play their best. When the Warriors play their best, I don't think it's a good fit for Kuminga. And so, like, I think that needs to separate. I think he needs to be in a different system. And I don't know if they're going to do that or not. So right now, I feel like their solution is try to play Dre and Steph so much that we can also play Kuminga in his growth, and they can like sort of like when Kuminga's off the floor, they can kind of play the way that we've played before. It's almost like the 2 timelines thing is happening on the court where it's like 2 different offensive styles. And I just think it's not cohesive. I don't think it's a long-term successful strategy. So yeah, I'm pretty concerned about Golden State long-term. And I think like if Steph has to play this much to keep them at 500 and he wears himself down and gets hurt, then like I think it's really over. So I don't think the Dennis Schroeder, unfortunately, the Dennis Schroeder signing or trade, which was to help get depth and help kind of fit the defensive mold, he's not a ball mover. And so like I think in some ways him and Kuminga are just slowing things down for what this offense is supposed to be. And I think those guys are good NBA players that would work in different systems better than they work in this system. So I think they kind of like, it feels like 2 different teams that are playing right now when Dre and Steph are on the floor versus when they're not on the floor.
Yeah, it's really bad. And their offense over this last 16-game stretch, 28th in the NBA in offense. Steph did miss some of that, but still, to be that bad when you had Steph for most of it is a concern. So I'm with you. The Melton loss is big. I think that's the headline. Like they really, really, really needed D'Anthony Melton for shooting, for secondary score handling, and obviously just to be an on-ball defender. You're asking a lot out of Andrew Wiggins there. So a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah.
and Buddy Hield like retired mid-season. I don't
Oh
know.
my
I don't
God.
know.
Yeah.
I didn't get that. But early in the season, they had D'Anthony Melton and Buddy Hield, ball movers and shooters, right? And
Yep.
guys who are like willing to move, and then Melton who would defend. Now they don't have those. Buddy's been a disaster for the
Mm-hmm.
last month. I was calling Buddy like 85% Steph to start the season. He's like negative 15% Steph now. It's just been an utter disaster for Buddy. And the maybe if Buddy starts shooting better, things will look a little bit better in terms of the flow of the offense. But right now, everything looks stagnant. It looks like
Yeah.
at times it looks like there's 4 or 5 guys on the floor playing their own game of basketball. And that is just so different from the Warriors. Like Buddy is like running around and trying to get his own shot. Kaminga's like trying to ISO and get his own shot. And then Trace Jackson Davis is like trying to cut and get offensive rebounds and stuff. And I'm like, none of you are doing this together. Like this, like it feels like you're all doing your own thing. And it's just it feels very different than Warriors basketball of the past.
Yeah, Buddy 1 of 15 in his last 2 games. Steve Kerr said that he's kind of like in his own head. He just needs one to get in, to go down to get back on track. I don't know about that. But yeah, he has to get right. They just need more shooting out there overall. The Suns, it feels bad. I mean, the fact that they go up against this Memphis team at home, getting Bradley Beal back, getting Devin Booker back, and then losing Bradley Beal mid game. Just every single night, it feels like they get someone back, and then someone gets hurt the next night. They're playing terribly. They're too small on the wings. They're too static on offense. They're just giving the ball to Kevin Durant, letting him shoot the ball and not moving it around anymore. I don't know, man. Like it shouldn't be this bad to have, which like we talked about. You're like, okay, hey, they got Ryan Dunn, they got Tyus Jones for nothing, and they shored up the areas that should help them. Tyus has been great. Ryan Dunn's been fine. Josh Okogie, like all their role players are like okay. They missed Royce O'Neal. He's out now. I think that like kind of mattered a little bit, but man, this team shouldn't be this. It's so weird that like if one guy like Booker had a terrible game too. It's so hard for these guys to like have everything go right in a night and just win a game. It's just not happening. And it's happening so easy to start the year. So it's pretty similar how them and the Warriors start out guns blazing. I was like, oh, the Suns, they might be live to,
Yep.
compete with OKC.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden just goes so bad, so fast for such a long period of time. But yeah, where are we at with these guys?
We did it again, Mike. We once
Yep,
again
did it again.
overestimated a Kevin Durant team. Here we are. We both had them. You had Phoenix 4th. I
Yeah.
had Phoenix 5th. Kevin Durant, meanwhile, is averaging 27.7 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists. He's shooting 41% from three. He's shooting 51% overall. And somehow it's not working. Like, I don't know. It's like a riddle. Every year it's like a riddle. Like Kevin Durant's awesome. The team around him, the guys individually seem to be playing okay, and the record is not that great. It's some weird riddle that I don't know how to solve every year. And we thought Mike Budenholzer, as an upgrade in the coaching staff, would kind of help things out. We thought them taking more threes in the preseason would kind of help things out. We thought Tyus Jones steadying hand would get them better in late game situations. They started the season just winning all these like clutch late game situations. Since then, it has not been the case.
Mhm.
And so I don't know. Like you said, every time we think they're about to get all 3 guys healthy, somebody gets hurt again. So it's been super frustrating for Phoenix. Their record in the games that they've had those 3 guys has been good. They've been very good when they've had all 3 guys together. I don't know how often they're going to be able to have all 3 guys together going forward. And so that remains kind of the question mark for them. In addition, they've played 18 of their first 32 games at home already. They have a schedule that's weighted more towards the road the rest of the way. And they have a negative 1.8 point differential. So they look like, on paper of this tier, the team that's most likely to be vulnerable going forward based on their point differential, based on their remaining schedule the rest of the way. And it's all confusing to me because Durant's played well. Booker's been a little bit disappointing relative to where, we had the high expectations coming into the season, and Beal's played okay. But in the role players, as you said, like Tyus has been exactly what we expected. Ryan Dunn shot the ball better than we expected. And somehow we're here. I don't understand it. Like I said, it's a riddle to me.
Yeah, and so just looking at their starting lineup stuff, and last year their starting lineup was good. They were one of the best lineups. They were like plus 12 net rating. This year, when they had their starting lineup, they're minus 16 per 100. That's like Wizards bad. So and they can't score. They're 103.7 offensive rating. Like it's just so weird how. And then even if you just narrow down the big three, if you want to call it that, they're still minus 4.3. So that and they were like plus six something last year. So like their star players aren't fitting well together. It's not just missing games. It's really, really weird to be that good individually and just they can't. It's just so out of sync. I mean, just none of these guys could ever click together anymore since the start of the season. So I don't know. They've got it in them for sure, and they have the roster, I think, to do it. But it's just they've just got no margin if one of these guys goes down. And they're just not like you talked about OKC. I'm sorry, Golden State playing, like two different styles of basketball. Like it's almost the same. These guys just
Yeah.
aren't in sync offensively. So it's
It's
pretty
sort
nasty.
of in a way, if you remember way back when we had the first big three, when LeBron joined Dwayne
Yep.
Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami, and there were so many concerns about there's only one basketball. Like, how are these guys going to all play together? And to those guys' credit, they all found a way to fit in a way that inevitably are ultimately ended up in team winning basketball.
Mhm.
And it seems like at that point we were all just like, oh, it was kind of silly to worry about how they're going to fit. Like they're just
Yeah.
great players. They'll make it work. And now years later, I think we're kind of seeing this is probably the best version of those concerns coming to fruition in terms of how players fit with each other, which is surprising because you would think these players fit just fine together in terms of the way that they space the floor in the modern game. But it just hasn't worked with Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker.
For sure. So last team we're going to talk about today is as you mentioned off the top, the Spurs are alive and playing really, really good basketball. And I'm going to start with a quote from Mitch Johnson. That was a really fun one, talking about Wembanyama. And he said, it's, quote, crazy how spectacular his simple is. Just love that quote. And it's true. Like he's out there and just dominates the games in such simplistic fashion. He's legit. Vassell's back. Chris Paul again goes to a team again, except for the Warriors, and it just starts winning games. So, Sohan, hopefully the back injury is okay. But this team's been good offensively. They've got obviously the tippy top eventually defensively if they can get everything to work. Hasn't happened defensively, but their offense is coming along. Wembanyama is just having a really, really big impact there. I almost wanted a better most improved player with the way that things are kind of shaking out here. But we put the Spurs in this fourth tier. I could tell you right now if they're in the playoffs, we're almost certainly not picking them because they're going to be like
Right.
seventh or
Yeah.
eighth. But just want to shout them out. What's been impressing you on the Spurs with Wemby and the other guys?
I think just sort of, we talked about how a lot of these teams look like we talked about with Phoenix and Golden State at times, how they look like they're playing kind of different brands of basketball. It's not super cohesive. That's not the case with the Spurs. And this has kind of always been the case with the Spurs, that their brand of basketball has always kind of looked cohesive. Mm-hmm. But they look like a team that knows that they're playing through Victor Wembanyama and embraces that they're playing through Victor Wembanyama, and everybody enjoys the benefits of playing through Victor Wembanyama. There's no sort of competition for hierarchy in terms of who's going to take shots and different things like that. And when Wemby has improved as a passer, his decision-making out of double teams and different things like that. And then they've added athletes like Stephen Castle. The athleticism is awesome to be able to add in terms of defense and point of attack. And then getting out in transition. And then Chris Paul just organizes everything. And I think Chris Paul is just a great leader. Like you said, everywhere he's gone except Golden State last year, the team has gotten better almost immediately. It's still happening as he approaches, into his upper 30s. It's just, he's an incredible, incredible leader and organizer of offense. And I think they've really benefited from that. And then getting Vassell back was the second scorer that they needed. And Sohan has, grown well as well. The way that we've talked about like Houston and Memphis and some of their young players ascending, we're seeing that with San Antonio. Like Sohan's improving, Wemby's improving, Vassell's improving. I think Chris Paul is helping get everybody into the right spots and helping kind of organize things in a way that maximizes everybody's growth. But yeah, it's a fun team to watch, and it's a fun team to see starting to turn the tides on competing, and they've got first round picks coming their way from the DeJounte Murray trade, from the DeMar DeRozan trade. Like they've got ways to keep kind of helping infuse this roster with talent. So it's going to be really fun to watch them build around Wemby the next few years.
Yeah, and I'm going to look up their lineup stuff because I'm sure they haven't played this lineup much, but with the way they're winning, it has to be good since Sohan and Vassell just came into the lineup there. But I did want to shout. I mean, I think Keldon Johnson, who doesn't play a lot, has been like pretty good for the way that he's been, just coming off the bench and giving them good energy there. So the current starting lineup, 103 minutes together plus 16.3 per 100 is really, 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 really good. So they're playing awesome, but yeah, they're not going to make a run this year, but next year maybe we're talking maybe 3 or 4 seed. Just Wemby.
I mean, the other thing to note is just remember, like Wemby is 21. This is his second season in the league. We are seeing the growth that Evan Mobley is making this year at age 22 in his third or fourth season in the league, and so like there's going to be another level that Wemby hits, which is just mind-boggling to think of what another level looks like. But there is going to be another level that he hits, and that's going to really catapult this team quickly. So yeah, they are in a great position to make runs in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Excited to see how it even. This is just starting out. This team's just starting to get healthy. So yeah, really excited to see where it goes. All right, that's going to do it to re-rank the Western Conference. Anything else you want to mention to get us out of here?
Yeah, as always, thank you for consuming our free content. If you're listening to this on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, consider leaving a rating and review. That helps circulate the podcast feed, gives us critical information in terms of improving the content for you. If you're interested in checking out the video version of this free content, you can go to Establish Run NBA on YouTube and check out our YouTube page there. If you're interested in checking out any of our premium content, you can go to establishrun.com/subscribe-NBA. We still have some holiday deals going. Those deals will go through the 3rd, January 3rd. We're recording this on the 2nd. So if you're interested in checking us out on the premium side, there are some discounted price tags available to you for the next 24 hours. Check that out over at establishrun.com/subscribe-NBA.
Yep, good stuff going on over there. Happy New Year, everyone. Catch you guys next time.